Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment that servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it's not very interesting subject. I never think about it myself.
Very unnatural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing?
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your country, is it not?
Shropshire, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town to expressly propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why? One may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. Then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specifically invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there is no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Oh, please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specifically for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you're going to eat at all. You behave as if you are married to her already. You're not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It's a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cicely.
Cecily, what on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you have had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you had let me know. I have been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no good offering a large reward now the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady she is, too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it to me.
But why does she call herself Little Cicely if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cicely with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt must be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call her your uncle? From Little Cicely, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I have ever seen in my life. It is perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest, if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolen, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cicely, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy. You had much better have the thing out at once.
My dear Algie, you talk as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Oh, here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algie, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
Oh, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
Well, you have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I've been really engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. This is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dined with that old cow on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family, and sent down with either no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well with whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That's not very pleasant. Indeed, it's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's own clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, then I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I must kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I am going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you do the same with your invalid friend who has an absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she is the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly wouldn't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that happy English home is proved in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes, so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear
Good
Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart, am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope that I am not. It would leave no room for development, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry for a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger, and now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Oh, certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mama. I am quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens. Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
Oh, that will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm greatly distressed. I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color. From what cause, of course, I cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
Oh, it is a great bore. I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I have just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling you that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen, and if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn out, if you'll kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they are improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed, I believe is so. Gwendolyn, will you accompany me?
Certainly, Mama.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise that you do so. Mama has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of that fact, and I often wish that in public, at any rate, you would be more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial
Provincial.
pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else, do you mean you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that is certainly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name, and it has music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say that I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all. Indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. So, would you probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude? The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing. I think it would only be fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. I have never loved anyone in this world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope that you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama! I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, but you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn! Gwendolyn, the carriage!
Yes, Mama.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you're not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I've always been of opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it, about 1,500 acres, I believe, but I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house! How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope? A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable slide. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I am afraid I really have none. I am a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. He was born in what the radical papers called the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I am afraid I really don't know. The fact, Lady Bracknell, is I said I had lost my parents. It would be near to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag. A somewhat large, black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom in Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me a display of contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know that what that enforcement movement led to? As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but it can hardly be regarded as an insured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you, then, what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What is it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For goodness sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algy. How idiotic are you?
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolen refused you? I know it is a way she has. She is always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolen is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I really don't know what a gorgon is like, but I am quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster, without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relationships are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolen becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algy?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Oh, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her, if she is pretty, and to someone else, if she is plain.
Ugh, that is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, before the end of the week, I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You had much better say a severe chill.
You are sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then, my poor brother Ernest to be carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill that gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cowdy was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't you feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has got a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she is only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolen yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolen are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they have called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear boy, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and dress. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it is always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
And what shall we do after dinner? Go to a theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, let us go to the club.
Oh no, I hate talking.
We might trot round to the Empire at 10.
Oh no, I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work when there's no definite object of any kind. Miss Fairfax. Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had on Mama, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming a man and wife, I may marry someone else. Marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mama, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire. Sheer. I don't know.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require some serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks. I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You can put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you are a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl, the only girl I've ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into some serious scrape someday.
Oh, I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that's nonsense, Algy. You never talk about anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Second act. Wait, who has Miss Prism?
Lexi does now because Jason took her part.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Sicily. Surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours. Your intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. At page 15, you will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. Stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious, I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanour is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that's why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cicely! I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety at that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. Certainly would. You know German and geology, and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure that I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favour of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cicely. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the one life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cicely, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that has never happened and couldn't possibly happen. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all of the 3-volume novels that...
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cicely. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully... I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no! The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see Dr. Chasuble is coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure. And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cicely, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that, and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cicely, that you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor is drawn from bees. Ahem. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet? We do not expect him until Monday afternoon. Yes, he usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer. Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor. A classical allusion merely drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong. I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good. With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. You might go as far as the schools and back. That would be delightful. Cicely, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Problems had their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven up from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany West. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I am so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does!
You are my little cousin, Cecily, I'm sure.
You're under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and really being good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, of course. I have been rather reckless.
I am glad to hear it.
In fact, now you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
And that is a great disappointment. I am obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life, but I still think you had better wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you'll be requiring neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well, the accounts I have received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, cousin Cecily.
I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind me reforming myself this afternoon?
It's rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
Well, you are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Oh, thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Maréchal Niel?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rosé.
Why?
Damn it. Because you are like a pink rose, cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
I would care to catch a sensible man. I should know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope? Never. Believe me, I do not deserve such neologistic phrase. The precept, as well as the practice of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony. That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray. But is a man not equally attractive when married? No married man is ever attractive except to his wife. And often, I've been told, not even to her. That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cicely? Perhaps she followed us to the schools. Mr. Worthing! Mr. Worthing? This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, oh, does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance? Still leading his life of pleasure?
Dead.
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it. Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap. Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am particularly susceptible to draughts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful, or as in the present case, distressing. I preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and festal holidays. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the Upper Orders. The bishop, who was present, was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Ah, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I suppose you know how to christen, all right? I mean, of course, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoke to the poor classes on this subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is. But is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child, dear doctor. I am very fond of children. No, the fact is, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly tend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable. And whether is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony to be performed?
Oh, I might trot round about 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages in your own estate. Poor Jenkins, the carter, a most hard-working man.
Oh, I don't see much fun in being christened along with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, we will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not be too bowed down with grief. What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise. This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack, I am pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily! My child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had toothache, and I have got a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you, still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings. After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dressing room, is in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it is perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John, I've come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for all the trouble I have given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful, and he knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, who he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be much good in one who is so kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, has he been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he has told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury, well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit that the faults were all on my side, but I must say that I think that Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering this is the first time I've come here.
Uncle Jack, if you won't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together. Cicely, you will come with us. Cicely! Cicely, anytime now!
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
Yeah. My phone rang, idiots.
There are no phones in 1895, you idiot.
What is it phone?
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child. We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algy, you must get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any bunburying here.
I have put... I have put Mr. Ernest's things in his room next to yours. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I've unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 something. A dress case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week in this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful lie you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cicely is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying for a whole week with you in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. And I get to see you undressing. I never saw anybody take so long to dress and with such little result.
Well, at any rate, that is better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it for being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:05, and I hope you will have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything.
Another line, Seeps, it's yours.
But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely come back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
Oh, he's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh.
And the horses.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then we have got to part?
I am afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Cheers.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to have a rather nice set of knockers.
Fuck you. And this is where the show went offline. I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary, along with a drawing of your penis.
You really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh no! You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I am quite ready for more about my knuckles. No, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful, incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily!
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell her to come around next week at the same hour. And in chains.
Yes, sir.
Why couldn't the dog cart be a boat?
Well,
Which
it is
boat?
Yeah, you know which boat.
You know.
I want to hear it.
Hurtigrute.
Hurtigrute.
Louder. Louder.
Hurtigrute.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on until next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anybody in the whole world but you and your delightfully delicious, rounded, soft and absorbent knuckles. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you? And
You
produce little babies with me.
You silly boy, of course. Why, we have been engaged in knuckles groping for the last 3 months at least.
For the last 3 months?
Be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But we've become engaged.
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, has formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him, after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest, and hoped you would put that thing inside of me.
Darling, when was this engagement actually consummated?
February last seemed a good day for it. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other, and after a long struggle with myself to get out of the chains, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day I bought this little ring in your name, and this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderful good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for you leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all of your dear letters.
My letters! But, my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters, French or otherwise.
You hardly need to remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I always wrote 3 times a week, sometimes oftener, mostly copied from Literotica.
Do let me read them, Cecily.
Deep underground poetry.
I couldn't possibly. It was far too conceited. The 3 wrote me after I had broken off the engagement so simple and so bespelled that even now I can hardly them without crying a little.
But was my engorged penis ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Here, today, I broke off the engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues to be charming.
But why on earth did you break it off? Did you intend to use it in your bedchambers? What have I done? I have done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear you've broken it off. Particularly when I wanted to take a piss out of it.
Well, you wouldn't do anything about it, that was the problem. And it would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once, forcefully. But I forgave you before the week was out and sewn it back on.
What a perfect arsehole you are, Cecily.
You dear sexy, sexy boy. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it? All over?
Yes, darling.
Oh my God.
Oh, God. Hang on, where are we? Oh, there. I am so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
I don't think I could break it off now that I have actually met you and wish to have sex with you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course. Oh.
You must not laugh at me, darling. But it is a dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband does not have a penis named Ernest.
But my dear child, my penis is called Tarquin. You mean to say you could not love me and had some other name?
But what other name?
Oh, any name you like. Tarquin.
Just with the name of Algernon.
You don't? Oh, dear, sweet, loving little darling. I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name, or indeed, an oddly shaped. In fact, it is rather an aristocratic name. Half of the chaps who get off in the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. Serious necessity. If my name was Algie, couldn't you lower me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might engage in heavy BDSM, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Your rectum is here, I suppose. Thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the Catholic Church.
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is a mostly learned man. He definitely took me on his lap when I was 5. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important circumcision. I mean, on the most important business.
Oh!
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and I have only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes? That would at least give you a chance to fap at least 5 times.
I'll be back in no time. I'll bring lube.
What an impetuous boy he is! I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary along with my latest sexual fanfic.
All right. God damn it. Okay. Mr. Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, probably sexual. Mrs. Fairfax states.
I think this is going a bit out of the original manuscript by now. Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
The rectomy. Pray ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss, I'm starting to sound more and more like riffraff.
I don't think O-Dubs minds. It's fine.
Miss Fairfax, this is not the time for a time warp. I suppose many of the good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them. I prefer other ways of being forward.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew. I am a pervert.
And I was drinking.
I probably have to stay to the. I probably have to stay to the manuscript while doing this, so we'll never get through it.
Jesus Christ. Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me that you and I are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
After we have known each other such a comparatively short time, hey, sit down.
May I call you Cecily? May I not?
Sure. Great pleasure.
Which one is it?
You will call me Gwendolyn, is you.
Oh, cool. You can take my name.
Yeah.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, it is not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have heard of my papa, I suppose?
I don't think so. I call other people daddy.
All right, Cecily, calm down.
Slide onto Papa's lap, baby girl.
Whoa up, whoa up.
Okay. Calm down.
No.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. So rabble like you shouldn't know him. I'm sorry. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for a man. Proper sphere for the man. What? And certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? Damn. And I do not like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cicely, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me to be an extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So do you mind my looking through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolen. I am very fond of being looked at. Here are my knockers.
Oh, yes, they're very nice knockers indeed. You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also.
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the existence of Miss Prism, who is certainly not a lesbian, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cicely. I have liked you ever since I have met you. I want to French you right here, right now. Shit, I lost my place. But I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be. I'm into older women, and quite not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid and rancid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cicely, I wish that you were fully 42, and more than usually plain for your age. I'm into plain MILFs.
We know.
Ernest has a strong, upright nature, as does his penis. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character has extremely to the influence of physical charms. Modern, no less, than ancient history supplies us with many most painful examples of what I referred to. Men are fucking dogs. If it were not so, indeed history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen? Did you say Ernest? Are you stealing my man?
Yes.
You bitch?
Yes, bitch. Yes, bitch.
Oh, but is it not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian? It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned that he had a brother.
I am sorry to say they had not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it, you lying slut. And now that I think of it, I have never heard of any man mention his brother. What kind of men have you been talking to? This subject seems distasteful to most men. Cicely, you have lifted a load from my mind and a load from his penis.
Repeatedly.
You floozy. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Withing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his lover tonight.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the entire orgy next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cicely, I think that there must be some slight error, you stupid floozy. My Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago, after heavy petting.
It is certainly very curious that he would pet you after he refused to pet me. What? Oh, I find that my bosoms are bigger than yours.
Sadly true.
For he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train, like 50 Shades of Grey, even if it is rubbish. I am so sorry, dear Cicely, if it is any disappointment to you, but I am afraid I have the prior claim, you slut.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear whore girl, if it caused you any anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind and his diapers.
What are we into?
I have no idea at this point.
You guys are getting into scat and it's gross. Back it off. Walk it back.
That's probably true.
Just BDSM.
Walk it back.
Oh, right. Jason is still around.
Oh, God. I'm sorry, Jason. Are we interrupting your session, your fapping session?
It was going fine until you started talking about shit and keep going to other stuff.
Yeah, keep the diapers out of this. My God. Those are for the CNN baby.
That was not me. Which is why I'm better.
Okay, where are we at this point, actually? I'm lost.
Okay, okay. Yes. If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once with a firm married hand, and I shall be a nag later on in my life.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy might have gotten into in his latest bondage session, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement, you stupid slut? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral manners. More than a moral duty to speak one's mind. Duty.
Duty.
Speak what's mine. Duty.
Duty.
It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest in an engagement? How dare you? For wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different. As our vagina.
Racist!
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
That man sounded exactly like me. Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills, quite close, one can see for all of 5 counties. Be careful not to fall off or be pushed.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds and sluts like you.
I suppose that is why you live in town?
Quite a well-kept garden, this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
Its bushes remind me of your Harriet Bush. I mean, I had no idea there were so many flowers in this country.
Oh, flowers are coming here, Miss Fairfax, as whores are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does, the country always bores me to death, which is probably why you're always fucking.
Ah. Stupid mute button. Hang on. This is what the newspapers call an agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy is suffering very much from it at just the present. It's almost an epidemic amongst them, I've been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you, detestable slut. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar's not fashionable anymore. It goes straight to my thighs.
Cake or bread and butter for your butt?
Butter my buns, baby. And bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses these days. What a judgmental bitch.
No shit.
She's English. It's what they do. Just,
Hand that to Miss Fairfax, Merriman, and try not to ogle her.
I handed it to myself.
Yeah.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter. You have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far, and I will cut out your eyes.
To save my poor, innocent, and trusting, and sexually thrusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there is no length to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I knew you were a floozy. I felt that you were false and deceitful and a slut. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Oh, thank you. I am more pretty than her. Thank you. You may.
Nogs.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is presently around your waist, squeezing your buttocks, is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack? Oh.
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? I see no young lady here. I just see an old slag. Good heavens, Gwendolen!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen. I mean, to Gwendolen.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little hole?
Thank you. You may now kiss me anywhere you want.
Cunnilingus.
I felt that there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. My Ernest is boring. Would you like to trade? The gentleman who's now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it, nor the size of my penis.
Oh.
I've seen it. Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything I liked, like having fucked Cicely. But my name certainly is John.
Repeatedly.
It has been John for years.
A gross
But my
deception
penis's
has...
name is Tarquin.
We know.
No, that's mine.
Stole it.
Oh dear. A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
We might have AIDS, dear girl.
Oh, Christ. It's your line.
Yeah, you missed it.
Oh,
No,
crap.
no.
Oh, right.
She was getting an AIDS test.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yes.
My sweet, wrong, and abused Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is just one question I like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest, and how big is your penis? We are both
10
engaged
inches.
to be... Ew.
Ew.
We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present. We aren't interested in you or Algernon.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life that I have ever come in my pants and been reduced to such a painful position. I am really quite inexperienced in doing anything.
Lies.
However, I will tell you... What? No. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I have never had a brother in my life, except for that one person that I fucked at boarding school. And certainly, I have not had the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Have you ever had a brother of any kind? One that speaks a Scandinavian language? No.
Never, not even of any kind.
En eller anden dag, så tager jeg fat på ting på dig, som du ikke bryder dig om.
I think your sister just decided to turn into a man real quick.
Ingenting med dem att göra.
Gwendolyn.
I'm afraid it's quite clear, Cicely, that neither of us are engaged to be married to anyone, and that my face is red and I broke my fucking accent.
It's not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find her in when she expected to be under a man, is it?
Let us go in the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there, or come in us there either.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly and sticky state of things is what you call Banburying, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful orgasm I've ever had in my life.
Well, you've no right to Bunbury here, and I've soiled my pants.
So, one has a right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses, including your bedroom. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens. I have some lubricant left from the time at boarding school. I hope it has dried up.
Oh, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life, especially when it concerns lubricant. I happen to be very serious about Bunburying. What on earth are you serious about? I haven't got the remotest idea, except perhaps that you prefer to be tied up in the dungeon and spanked profusely. Anything I should fancy, you have such an absolutely trivial nature and a delightful rump.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algie, and a very good thing, too, because you make me hard.
Your brother is a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? Maybe he likes the company of other men. You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing either. It might give your dick a rest time.
As for Ernest, I think that he and Mr. Bunbury will have a very good time later, quite often. As for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I must say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward, whom I have introduced to several of my particular tastes.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced in all the ways of the Kama Sutra young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin, and my sister, and my daughter, and that we're all having a lovely, mistress orgy up at my place.
Hold up, are we sure this doesn't take place in the South? Thank you. I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn. That is all. I love her. I wouldn't fuck her.
Oh, you can't.
I simply wanted to be inserted into Sicily. I adore her and her quite spacious vagina.
She has great knockers. Well, I simply wanted to... Oh, wait. There's certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew and her wondrous knockers.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united in the throes of passion.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about one's business and one's sexual escapades. Only people like stockbrokers do that. And then merely at dinner parties and...
How can you sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble? I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless, even when your pants are wet.
You can eat my muffin.
You ain't seen nothing until you're down on a muffin. And I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. Just ask Marlon Brando. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them. Just like pussy.
I say it is perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances. You should be eating my arsehole instead.
Oh, when I am in trouble, eating arsehole is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately and internally will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink and a paddle. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy and slightly aroused. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason you should eat them all in that greasy way. You will get fat.
My dear, I am already rather overweight. I wish you would have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I love your dad bod. I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins, and I'd much prefer to eat my own seed.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you, under the circumstances. This is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same, except for the age.
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner. It's absurd. I never go anywhere without my dinner or my leather catsuit.
Wow.
No one ever does, except vegans and people like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be circumcised at 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, I had no idea you were Jewish. The sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. Look, I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no evidence at all that I have ever been christened by anybody. I should think it extremely probable that I never was, ever, before, with anyone. And so does Dr. Chasuble. It is entirely different in your case, filthy. You have been christened already by everyone.
Yes, but I've not been ejaculated on for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing. Does not matter when the bukkake took place, just that it did.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it, as well as my rectum. If you are not quite sure about your ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell, and quite loose. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a gang of marauding refugees.
Yes, but you said yourself that a gang of marauding refugees was not hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Islam is always making wonderful improvements in kidnapping.
Oh, that is nonsense. You are always talking nonsense.
Jack, you have the muffins again. Why are you not at my muffins?
Nom
I
nom.
wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. And they're quite hairy. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Why on earth then do you allow a tea cake to be served up for your guests? As well as certain items like tanga eggs.
Oh my god.
What ideas have you of hospitality?
Algernon, I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't finished jacking off yet, and there is still 1 muffin left.
Third act.
Ooh.
To be fair, TK is disgusting.
Okay, Lexi, are you actually able to speak right now? Because you look like you were basically about to collapse.
Dying?
dying,
No,
yeah.
I'm good. I'm good, but this is all you guys. Other than crying, you mean?
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done for a threesome, seems to show me that they have some sense of shame. That they have some sense of shame left, which is a shame.
Well, they have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance and practice.
They don't seem to notice it just at all. Could you cough or moan or something, you floozy?
I haven't got a cough. I suppose I could just take my clothes off.
Oh yes, sexy bitch. I mean, they're looking at us. What a
Effrontery.
effrontery. Effrontery.
I'm drunk.
Crouching! That's very fun.
I swear to drunk, I'm not God.
Very
Meh.
forward of them. Assume position on your knees.
Oh, that's my favorite part. Let us preserve a dignified silence as they get in.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect. Do you think they're fucking in there?
A most... Probably not.
What?
Oh, you're roboting.
Yeah.
Your line.
Oh, all right. But we will not be the first to speak, or moan, or come.
Certainly not.
So,
Cicely, did you have a cold this whole time? Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you, which much depends on your reply. But you spoke first, you dunce. Whatever.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable, and your knuckles are spectacular. Mr.
Thank
Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's sexy brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of boning you.
That certainly seems like a very satisfactory and pleasurable explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him. After all, he does have a rather large penis and known for fucking the brains out of women.
Well, I don't believe him, but that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his crotch.
Like David Bowie in Labyrinth.
Basically, yeah.
True, in matters of grave importance, style.
Dance, magic, dance, magic, dance, magic, dance. Oh, sorry.
You
Do
remind me
not
of the
make
babe.
me think of both.
Yeah. Where are we? Who's turn
True
is
in
it?
matters of grave
right.
importance.
Hey, I was reading it. Hey, yo.
I was answering the question. Hey, yo, hey. When did you become a greaser? My God. Maybe we should do Grease another time.
Yes, do a Greek tragedy, please. Fucking yes.
No,
Okay.
I meant Grease with John
Grease,
Travolta. Yeah, you're the one that I want. Ramalama Ding Dong.
Need a man, and my heart is set on Tim.
Oh, God. Don't make me fap while I'm reading the girl part. It's just weird.
It is weird.
Already.
Jesus Christ, don't make me blush already. God damn it.
Seems a trap.
True, in matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Withing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order for you to have an opportunity of coming in sight of me as much as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax? Your supple labias are tempting.
And engorged.
I have the greatest doubts on this subject. I intend to crush them.
So you'll lose.
This is not a moment for just German skepticism, or Norwegian, or Swedish, or Danish, or whatever European skepticism there is. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Withing's. I cannot speak. That seems to have been the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His penis alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Oh, I do agree. Then you think we should forgive them and have a nice foursome?
Yes, I mean at once.
True, I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender, like one's asshole on the first date. Which of us should tell them?
Wouldn't.
It depends on the person. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
Here, boys, stand close together. Yes. An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time for me? What a completed bitch.
Certainly, along with other things.
Ew.
1, 2.
Your Christian names is still an insufferable barrier.
That is all.
Ready?
All right, boys.
Oh, Christian.
Christian names. Is that all? But we. Could you speak or not? Like, what the fuck? All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, Christian
names.
You're supposed to go on 3. What's wrong with you?
Fucking nigger. Stop it.
You're the nigger, not me.
You're both being Nick.
All right, I'll count the 3, and you're gonna do it together.
Okay.
1,
On
Yeah,
to
come on, you
Two.
nigger faggots.
1,
Oh.
2, 3.
Oh,
Christian names.
Is that all?
Is that all? But we are going to be christened.
christened this afternoon.
I'm so drunk. I'm sorry. You're
Not
frustrating.
Tits.
Okay.
For my sake, are you prepared to do this terrible thing, which is switching partners?
I am. With pleasure.
I have. What? That's not your line.
No, it's not,
I'm
but
Jackie, you
anyway.
fucking dick.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah, stop jacking her off.
Oh,
Yeah.
fucking hell.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
I think this is bringing to a place that even the author didn't expect.
I
We're going to get
apologize.
feminist.
We've switched names so many times that we've forgotten exactly who we are and who we're engaged with. Gwendolyn, that's you. Yes, I am prepared to do this terrible thing of sticking my penis in that horrid dumpster fire between your legs.
To please me, are you ready to face this fearful ordeal that is my gaping cunt?
Yeah, nah, fuck off.
He chooses the bigger knockers. I mean, oh, how dreadful.
Be a feminist.
I think we're scaring off Peach. I'm just
sorry.
saying.
Who's Gwendolyn?
That's me. I'm sorry. I got distracted. How absurd to talk of this, of the equality of sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
Of course we are.
Third way.
High five, bro.
High five.
They have moments of physical courage of which we know absolutely nothing whenever we take our clothes off.
Oh, yes, darling. You are quite correct. Because they would be able to fuck an ugly bitch like you. I mean, darling.
Good night, love.
Who's Merriman?
That's me.
Okay.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
There we go.
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthington, Mama, with the other guy on the side.
She wants me, fuck you, Lady Bracknell.
Tom Hitter, sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I'm glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension on the influence of a permanent income on thought. Ooh. I do not propose...
Where did he go? He got a call from his mommy.
Am I muted?
No.
Okay. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But of course, you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment, because I need your tongue on my titties. And at this point, indeed, at all points, I am firm.
Yes, you are.
I have noticed quite often, Lady Bracknell, that your titties are quite firm, in which case I decided to turn my attentions toward your younger daughter, Gwendolyn, because I know that is somewhat of a hereditary trait. But
well, thank you.
As such, and on account of her luscious, glorious titties, you can't deny it. Her milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, you old bat?
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
No. Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present, sir. In fact, Bunbury is being shafted in the behind by a large Negro called Bubba with a gigantic wooden strap on.
Shafted in the behind by a gigantic Negro named Bubba with a wooden strap on? When did Bunbury get shafted in the behind by an enormous Negro named Bubba with a wooden strap on? Bunbury doesn't live here? Bunbury's... Oh, wait. That must have been extremely sudden to have been shafted in the behind by an enormous Negro named Bubba with a wooden strap on.
Does Marcellus Wallace look like a bitch?
What?
Say what again? Say what one more goddamn time.
You heard me.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon from splinters in the rear, which immediately festered.
What did he die of?
Oh God! Splinters
Aside from
in his anus, which immediately festered.
Splinters in his anus. Was he a victim of revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity and being shafted in the behind by an enormous Negro named Bubba with a wooden strap on.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean, he was found out. He came out of the closet. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live with all that pus seeping from his anus. That is what I mean. So Bunbury died.
He seems to have a great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice to die. And now that we have firmly got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, I asked Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is holding in what seems to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
Oh, that harlot is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward. They fucked.
And I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
Because she's pregnant.
With
I
my
beg
blood
your
child.
pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of anything.
That's okay. Exciting the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on. Wait, did I get it wrong? Did I get it really wrong?
Hertfordshire.
Hertfordshire. But the number of engagements that go on seems to be considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, NB. Fifeshire, whatever, I don't know.
Fifthshire.
We call it
That
Worcester
sounds right.
here. We call it Worcester
Fifthshire.
here, so just FYI. Yeah, Worcester.
Worcester.
That's
Doesn't
that's
matter.
it.
Fifeshire is correct.
that's in New England. And I've been to Worcester.
Massachusetts.
Yes.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, you old bitch.
I have seen strange erections in that publication.
Not mine. Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Mrs. Markby, and Markby. They were gay and they adopted each other and took everyone the same name.
That's weird when old gay guys adopt their boyfriends. Markby, and Markby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told that one of them, Mr. Markby's, is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties wearing well, not very much. So I am satisfied.
It's the bear costume.
Oh, that's the one like from The Shining, right?
Yes.
That was a dog costume.
Close enough.
Yeah,
No,
you could have just gone with the joke, Hitsu.
Thanks for ruining it.
Thanks for dicking up the joke, Hitsu.
I'm sorry.
Hitsu's the old lady in the bathtub.
I wasn't paying attention. I don't have
Well,
lights for a while.
Now you're the old lady in the bathtub. You're welcome.
Cool. Cool. Look at my old vagina.
Ew, no. Amy Schumer. Stop it.
Gross.
Just keep going, please. I'm already.
Jack, very irritably.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration. It's not how we pronounce it in America, and I'm from America, so suck my American dick.
It is whooping cough, even here. Go on.
Yeah, I didn't ruin something this time.
That's not what they told us in our EMT training at preschool. Just FYI. So you might want to inform all of the trainers and the doctors who go out to the preschools to use the proper terms for bullshit that no one cares about. Registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles, both the German and English variety.
What about the Madagascar bitch flu?
She's never been to Madagascar.
Ah, a life crowded with incidents, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl, I'm not myself in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolyn, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I'd better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000? And in the funds? Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now that I look at her and her bank account. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities, like firm, cold, hard cash. Any of the qualities that last and improve with time, like interest and accumulated interest. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces, like the surface of a bank book, but not the insides of it. Just come over here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. And you got something stuck up your butt there. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous result in a very brief space of time. I know I've used my large Negro named Bubba with a wooden strap-on my French maid, and she improved marvelously. I remember recommending to one young lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Internally.
Kindly turn around, sweet child. I gotta look at your caboose. No, the side view is not what I want. The caboose, yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points in our age are its wanted principle and its wanted profile. The chin, a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. You've got to be able to strap a dildo on there. Oh, yes. They're worn very high just at present, Algernon.
Are they, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily's the sweetest, dearest, prettiest, horniest girl in the whole world.
Tightest.
I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Not anymore.
Only in the bedroom.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend on. Oh, he's spent so much time in white chapels, whorehouses. Thank you for finishing my thought. That he's got like negative money in his account. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Greedy bitch.
Fucking thanks, Aunt Augusta. It's about fucking time.
Cecily, you may kiss me, and be sure to throw your tongue in there.
Definitely.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Get stuffed, you old bag.
Oh, the is you here.
To speak quite frankly, I'm not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, may I almost say, an ostentatiously eligible young man. I mean, he was really available to a large Negro named Bubba with a wooden strap on. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell. Your very handsome nephew. But the fact of the matter is, I do not approve at all of his whoring. I suspect him of being most untruthful and riddled with syphilis.
Untruthful and riddled with syphilis? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He's an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. He has syphilis. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London on an important question of romance, he obtained an admission to my house by means of the false pretense of being my brother. He knows he was playing around in the back door. That's how I know he has syphilis. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint of my Perrier, some champagne. I was specifically reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin and snatch in the area as well as my asshole. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is he was perfectly well aware from the first that I have no brother, and that I have never had a brother, and that I don't intend to have a brother. My parents are eunuchs.
Bags.
Never, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I've decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent on the grounds of syphilis and lying.
Come here, sweet child. How old are you, dear? And more importantly, what does that mouth do?
Well, only 18, but I always admit to 20 men whenever I go to parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no one should ever be quite accurate about their age or the number of cocks that have been inside of them. In fact, for a long time, it was uncertain as to whether or not I would have more hot meals or cocks in me, but then I skipped lunch. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties, well, it will not be very long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, in this dick-measuring contest, for I have the largest dick, and I apologize profusely for interrupting you again. But it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age till my dick reached 35 inches.
35 inches? Have you been doing the hydrotherapy?
Well, at least I can take it easily still.
I've been weight training.
That does not seem to be a grave objection. 35 inches is a very attractive measurement of the penis. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained able to take 35 inches for years. Lady Dumpleton is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has taken many 35 inchers ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which has been many years now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the ability to take 35 inches than you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large
Tripod,
accumulation.
motherfucker. Mic
There'll be
drop. Thud.
There will be a large accumulation of semen.
LG, could you wait for me until you grew?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could stretch it out. Even
Yes.
longer
Oh my
and longer.
God.
I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for 35 inches. It always makes me rather cross-eyed. I'm not punctual myself, you know, but I do like punctuality in others when waiting for a good rogering. Waiting even to be married to such a length is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
Orgy, Mr. Moncrief. Beyond that, I don't know.
Give him to me, Cecily.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Ms. Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is capable of 35 inches, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But, my dear Lady Bracknell, you dried up old cunt. The matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to, and merry fapping.
But I heard that you and Algernon were together during tea time on the down low. That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen.
The Down Low Club is not a thing!
Algernon, of course.
My wife's name is Michelle.
What the
Come
fuck?
dear. We have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss many
Deeps knows what
more
I'm talking about.
might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
Christening, sir. Is that not somewhat premature?
I forgot about you.
Not after the 35 inches, I think.
Oh my God.
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand that there will be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that as things are now, it would be much of practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savour of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry with her legs wide open.
I bet she is.
Yes.
Go fuck yourself.
Miss Prism, did I admit her? Wait, did you say Miss Jism or Miss Prism?
Oh yes, Lady Bracknell. I am on my way to join her and cover her in my holy jizz.
Oh, Miss Prism with Jism. Got it. Pray allow me to detain you for a moment so that you build up a little more before you get there. The matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability until I get my wang out and just go all over her 10 times in one load.
Smack her in the face.
That is a lot of ropes. You're shooting ropes, Mr. Dr. Chasuble. It is very obviously the same person.
Oh, the next line.
May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam, and I
Miss
join.
So you don't count chisming over Miss Prism to be against your celibacy?
If it doesn't poke, then it doesn't count.
Okay.
Nope.
Celibacy really just means you don't marry.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued scissoring companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
Scissor me timbers.
She approaches. She is Noi. I guess she just couldn't wait in the vestry any longer. Just check out that ass.
Sploosh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Cannon. I have been waiting for you there for 1 hour and 3/4 and warmed myself up 5 times.
Come here, Jism Prism. Prism, where's that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality, but the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. Oh God, I wish I did. In fact, the case of this. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory and on my vagina, I prepared, as usual, to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction I had written during my few unoccupied hours, in between diddling myself. In a moment of mental abstraction, which I can never forgive myself because I'm so busy with my hand between my legs, I deposited the manuscript up my cervix, in the bassinet, and the baby in the handbag. And it was a very moist manuscript afterwards.
But Miss Prism, where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthen.
Miss Prism! This is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
Fine. I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railways in London. It was a little wet, shall we say.
Oh my God, please tell me that you're my mother, and then I can go, no, like in Star Wars.
No, it gets worse than that.
What railway station?
Victoria. The Brighton line, because it's headed towards somewhere that smells like fish anyway.
I must retire to my room for a moment. I'm extremely turned on. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
Well, if you're not too long, and as I can tell, you're not.
It never is.
I will wait here for you all of my life while I fuck every other man beside you and still come running back to you whenever they break my heart, because I am that much
I
of a
love
slut.
you, you saucy minx.
I love you too.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell? Because I
dare not even suspect, Dr. Chapman. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely excited.
Very emotional nature. He seems very turned on by absolutely everything. I can see it from here.
This noise.
It's easier when it's 35 inches.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They're always vulgar and often convincing.
I'm coming.
My advice, private this stream if you don't want your channel taken down, dude.
To take him down.
Just like Allie's pants.
It's not now.
No, it's okay because Milo Stewart played porn noises, so there's always an argument for that.
That is true.
Continue.
As presidents.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hardly
It's
complaining.
needed. It's art. This is
Okay,
art. If they take down the importance of being earnest, YouTube is fucked.
And as everyone knows,
Jason,
art
you're
is
lying.
anal.
I wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last. I hope he's good at coming very slowly. Oh.
Allie.
Is this a handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. I apologize for any seepage. The happiness is more than one life depends on your answer, especially the handbag babies I just made a minute ago.
I'm going to sniff it. Yep, it seems to be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Galvin Street omnibus in young and happier days. Oh God, they were so happy. Here is the stain on
My
the lining
mom
called
was a whore.
explosion, a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred with Leamington. On the lock are my initials. I had forgotten them in an extravagant mood. I had placed them there. I just don't know what I do when I just get into one of those moods. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am
But it
delighted.
also
It's my
is
snail
5
trail.
inches.
I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years. It's nothing to shove up my cunt. That just quite fits.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was inside of that vagina.
You,
Yes, Mother!
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried, I do not deny that this is a serious blow, you cunt. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Fuck who you want. Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. I had my IUD in place that day. There is the lady who
I
can tell you
was
who
just taking a drink of water!
Oh yes, squirt for me.
I didn't think I would be the first one to squirt during this goddamn thing.
Yeah, it's usually my job.
Yeah, Allie, it's your line.
Oh, did you finish with that one?
Yeah, I did.
Lady-
Timmy just squirted water though.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. That guy who pretended to be your brother is actually your brother. You're the son of my sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
No! That's not true! It's impossible!
Like,
Search your feelings, you know it to be true.
Algie's elder brother? Then I have always had a brother. After all, I knew I had a brother, not one named Ernest. I always said I had a brother because I'm a compulsive liar, but I'm not. Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Why is this her fault? What the I love how he just turns around and blames her.
Cecily, you
It's your fault. It's your fault for doubting me.
Allie
Dr.
lied.
Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algie, you young scoundrel. You will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me like a brother in all your life. Oh, we fucked, for God's sake.
Well, it's not tilted tale, I admit. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice at giving anal satisfaction.
And I loved it.
Well then, my own. Which means that you did have a brother with who was Scandinavian. Good. Anyway, but what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Good heavens! I had quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections, which is pretty obvious since I fucked everybody in this room.
Oh, what noble nature and knuckles you have, Gwendolyn!
Then the question had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism left me in a handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening and a perambulator with Swarovski crystals, and you had 20-inch rims on that bitch, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Why you leave me in the ghetto then? All that shit was stolen. That's not cool. Don't leave a baby in the ghetto. Not
Actually,
cool.
I think we need Lexi with a Cockney accent here, considering Victoria Station.
It's Victoria. It's still quite posh.
Yeah, I know.
Then I was christened. That is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst. Don Travius.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was. I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was a result of an Indian climate and marriage, and marriage, and marriage, and marriage, marriage, and indigestion, and other things of that kind.
Algie! Can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was? You know he diddled you.
Dear boy, we were never even on diddling terms. He died before I was a year old.
Ugh. I thought this was Islam. His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army list of the last 40...
Grindr, whatever.
The army list of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. Generals... Malum, Maxbum, Magley, what ghastly names they have! Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief, Lieutenant. Or is it Lieutenant?
Lieutenant. Lieutenant.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Bitch!
Damn it.
Motherfucker!
1840. Captain, Lieutenant, Colonel, Colonel General. 1869. Christian names. Ernest John. I always told you, Gwendolyn, my name was Ernest, didn't I? Well, it is. It's Ernest after all. I mean it naturally. It's Ernest.
Yes, I remember now that the general was called Ernest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name, and I knew that all the time because I'm smarter than everybody here.
You're full of shit, Mom. Ernest, my own Ernest, I felt from the first that you could have been no other name because I'm a shallow bitch.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to have blue balls for so long and then find out that suddenly all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. I am the most truthful man with blue balls you've ever met. Can you ever forgive me? And
Just
suck
come
my dick.
fuck me right here. I can, for that I feel that you are sure to change, as your dick will surely grow to 35 inches.
No,
I
he's the one who
approve.
has it already.
Oh, even better. Keep that command, Cicely, you whore.
My own one.
Letitia! Frick.
Cecily, at last.
Why do I not get any lines?
No!
My nephew, it
Winnie
seems,
Pooh! At last!
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
Hooray!
Almost 3 hours for this thing. Holy cow.
And yes, as I predicted, we have lost all our viewers.
No, there's a few people here, aren't
There's 4
there?
left.
There's a
You
5.
dirty, dirty, debauched innocence
3 now.
cracking.
At one point, we were up to 20, and I consider
know.
that a victory. I was
That
like,
is
fucking
definitely a
20
victory.
people came to watch us read The Importance of Being Earnest.
Things went absolutely fine until Seeps and I managed to have to talk to each other, I noticed.
Yeah, that's okay though. I'm gonna go,
And then
guys.
it kind of went downhill.
Alright, see you, Jason. It was fun. It was fun.
All right, love you
Bye,
guys. Talk to you
Jays.
later.
Thanks for coming. See ya.
Bye.
Okay, well, since it has been 3 hours almost,
3 hours, fucking hell.
I think I will end the stream here. We,
Cool.
the actors, have been Harlequin's Happy Hour, also known as Ali, who has gotten severely drunk.
Yeah.
And we have also had the wonderful Lexi Madison, Spangaline,
You may find me on Twitter anytime.
and chained up in the bathroom. We have also had the lovely and talented Hitsugi-chan, or Hitsugi Nerd. We have also had the slightly overweight but still very charming Slay, also known as the Sage, Tim Kronsel.
Most of the weight go to my 40-inch penis.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Those who have left us have been Jason Brazil, also known as Tenga Boy, and Cognitive Thought, who didn't really leave much.
Cognitive thought. Not
Thought.
cognitive thought.
Thought.
Cognitive thought.
Cognitive thought.
T-H-O-T. T-H-O-T.
English. Cognitive
That-
thought.
that's
Thought, Mrs.
thought. No,
Thought.
you're incorrect. He's a thought, not
Thought.
a thought.
Is
A thought.
Cognitive
He's a
thought.
He's a
Thought. T-H-O-T.
Yeah.
Cognitive
Thank
thought.
you, everyone, for joining us. If you thought this stream was about drama, you have been severely mistaken. It was a comedy. Now, good night and good luck to all.